This is Chef Whispershroom, and his boss Lord Gumboot has ordered him to cook 12 meatballs, of which he is very capable, and he cooks 12 identical meatballs. However, his enemy Petty Peter decides to sneak in a poisonous meatball, and this meatball looks identical to all the ones that Chef Whispershroom has cooked. Now it's up to Chef Whispershroom to try to identify this poisonous meatball, but all he has to use is a normal meatball scale. Now the question for today is, how can we find the poisonous meatball in just 3 weighings? Now this question is pretty challenging, so we'll take it step by step. Let's start by labeling all our 12 meatballs 1 through 12 to help us better differentiate what we're looking at. Now on the first weighing, we want to weigh 4 meatballs against 4 meatballs. This will actually give us the most information in just one weighing. Now using this step 1, there are 2 possible outcomes. Either the scale stays perfectly balanced, or the scale is imbalanced. If we can then show that from both option 1 and option 2, we are able to find the poisonous meatball in just 2 more ways, then we have proven that you can get the poisonous meatball from the 12 initial meatballs in exactly 3 weighings every time. So let's start with option 1. After 1 weighing, we have gotten here, and the scale is still balanced, which means that these 4 meatballs must weigh exactly the same as these 4 meatballs. Thus, none of these 8 meatballs can be the heavier or lighter meatball, and none of them are poisonous. So that tells us that the poisonous meatball must be one of these 4 meatballs right here. Now how can we figure out which one of these 4 meatballs is the poisonous one in just 2 more weighings? Well, our strategy is to actually incorporate one of our normal meatballs and add it into our scale. So now we'll compare 2 possible poisonous meatballs, 9 and 10, with another possible poisonous meatball, 11, and a normal meatball, number 1. And this will give us a few possible outcomes. Either the scale is balanced, the scale is lopsided towards the 9 and 10 meatballs, or it's lopsided towards the 11 and 1 meatballs. All 3 of these cases give us enough information that we were able to deduce the poisonous meatball with just 1 more weighing, and we'll demonstrate that right now. So if you take the top case where they're balanced, they've been balanced this whole time, which implies the only way that they can all be balanced is if this one is unbalanced, the one we didn't weigh. So that gives us that 12 is poisonous. Since it's been balanced the whole time, that implies that either 9 or 10 is light, or that 11 is heavy. And finally, if we look at this case right here, it's lopsided the other direction, so that implies that either 9 or 10 is heavy, or 11 is light. Now if we look at these 2 scenarios, what's a way that we can measure with 1 more weighing which one's the poisonous ball? And that is to weigh 9 versus 10. And each of these will give us a scenario where we can deduce the poisonous ball. So let's weigh 9 and 10, and let's start with this example right here. So in this example, we know either 9 or 10 is light and 11 is heavy. When we weigh 9 versus 10, this is one possible outcome. 9 is lighter and 10 is heavier. And since we know 9 or 10 is lighter means it's poisonous, that means 9 is poisonous. Now another scenario is if they're both balanced. And if they're both balanced, that means 11 must have been the heavy one and 11 is poisonous. And finally, if it's lopsided the other direction, that must mean 10 is lighter than 9, which 10 is light implies that 10 is poisonous. So now we know that this scenario can be found with just 1 more weighing. Now let's check this one. This one follows a pretty similar process using the opposite, that 9 or 10 is heavy or 11 is light. So that leads to this scenario where 10 is heavier than 9 and 10 is poisonous. This scenario where the even and 11 is poisonous, and this one where 9 is heavier than 10 and 9 is poisonous. We have now successfully shown that option 1 can be found with just 3 weighings. So now the only other part of this question is to now take a look at option 2, and if we can prove that if we can get from here to the poisonous meatball with just 2 more weighings, then we can get the whole solution in just 3 weighings like asked. So let's take a look. Now our initial weighing in option 2 gives us a little bit of insight on how we should approach this. Based on this initial weighing, we know that either 1, 2, 3, or 4 is lighter, or 5, 6, or 7, and 8 is heavier. And what can we do with this? We can strategically structure our next weighing to account for this information and try to get us more information. So what does that actually look like? The weighing we should use is to compare 1, 2, and 5 so 2 light balls and 1 heavy ball, to 3, 6, and 9, which is 1 light ball, 1 heavy ball, and 1 normal ball. 9 is a normal ball. Now again, this second weighing now gives us more information and leads us to 3 different options that give us enough information to get the poisonous ball with just 1 more weighing. So this weighing either leads to the right side being lighter, them being balanced, or the left side being lighter. And from each of these scenarios, we were able to deduce the poisonous ball with just 1 more weighing. Let's take a look. So for scenario 1, what we figured out is that 1 or 2 must be light or 6 must be heavy. From scenario 2, we figured out that either 4 must be light or 7 or 8 is heavy. And from scenario 3, we figured out that either 5 must be heavy or 3 must be light. So now we can figure out from each of these scenarios the poisonous meatball with just 1 more weighing. And the balls we compare for our final weighing are as follows. For scenario 1, we compare ball 1 versus 2. For scenario 2, we compare 7 versus 8. And for scenario 3, we compare 3 versus 9. So let's take a look at scenario 1. We know in scenario 1, 1 or 2 being lighter or 6 being heavier implies poison. So if we look at the first scenario where 2 is lighter than 1, this implies that 2 is light and 2 is poisonous. In the case where they're balanced, that means 1 and 2 have the same weight, which means 6 must be heavy and 6 is poisonous. And finally, if 1 is lighter than 2, we have 1 is lighter than 2 and 1 is poisonous. Now if we take a look at scenario 2, we're comparing 7 versus 8. So in this scenario, we know if 4 is lighter or 7 or 8 is heavier, then those are the poisonous balls. So if we have 7 is heavier than 8, that implies 7 is heavy and 7 is poisonous. If 7 and 8 are balanced, that means 4 must be light and 4 is poisonous. And in the case where 8 is heavier than 7 right here, 8 is poisonous, and that is option 2. Now finally, let's take a look at option 3, where we're comparing 3 versus 9. So in this option, a heavy 5 or a light 3 implies poison. So if we weigh them out together and they're balanced, that implies 5 is poisonous. And if 3 is lighter than 9, that means 3 must be light, 3 is poisonous. So that concludes option 3. So from there, we have now figured out that all of option 2 can be deduced in just 3 weighings. Since we already know that option 1 can be concluded in 3 weighings, that covers all our options in this entire problem. So yes, Chef Whisper Shroom can find the poisonous meatball in just 3 weighings. He is indeed a hero. He tells the good news to his boss, Lord Gumboot, who declares that he's officially promoted, bringing a little tear of joy to a beautiful man's eyes.